energy technology already in existence that could eliminate urban air pollution, oil spills, acid rain, landfills, sewage sludge, and produce enormous quantities of pure, fresh water in the process. An energy system that would stimulate the automotive, defense, and energy industries and produce a fuel that could cleanly and efficiently take the place of fossil fuels and nuclear energy systems. Sound too good to be true? Well, it's not. It's hydrogen, the simplest and most abundant element in the universe. As an energy medium, hydrogen is the only alternative that is completely non-toxic. It's essentially clean burning when you use it as a fuel, and it will never run out. It's inexhaustible. Hydrogen as a fuel is nothing new. It was first used by Rudolf Aron, a German engineer in the 1930s, who converted hundreds of trucks and buses to run on hydrogen. But it wasn't until the energy crisis in 1973 that intensive research into hydrogen as an automotive fuel was undertaken. The results were very encouraging. Cars, buses, and even recreational vehicles were successfully converted to run on hydrogen. The mechanics for converting virtually any engine to burn hydrogen fuel have been worked out and are found to be relatively simple, involving only a change of fuel tank and carburetor or ignition system and the engine timing. And hydrogen was proven to be more efficient than gasoline. This 1974 Monte Carlo, which got 13 miles per gallon on gasoline, achieved 22 miles per equivalent gallon of gasoline burning hydrogen. Germany's Bavarian Motor Works, or BMW, has been experimenting with hydrogen-fueled vehicles since 1979. They have developed a high-tech cryogenic fuel tank for the liquid hydrogen, making the experience of driving and fueling their car very similar to the gasoline-burning models. But these vehicles are much more than a novelty when you consider that the air coming out of the exhaust is actually cleaner than the air that goes into the engine. With the exception of trace amounts of nitrous oxide, which comes from the nitrogen in the air, the only thing put out by these hydrogen-fueled cars is pure steam. Instead of being the primary contributor to air pollution, cars could actually be cleaning the environment through which they travel. And the use of hydrogen is not limited to automobiles. Both Boeing and Lockheed Aircraft Corporation have conducted extensive research into hydrogen-powered jet aircraft and have determined that such aircraft will be much safer and up to 40% more efficient than conventional fueled aircraft. So if hydrogen is such a wonderful, safe fuel that could solve so many of our air and water pollution problems, why isn't the world making a switch to hydrogen? I mean, what are we waiting for? Well, until now, hydrogen has been more expensive to produce than fossil fuels. In fact, most of the hydrogen that has been produced has been made from fossil fuels, such as natural gas or coal. But there's another way to make hydrogen, by using electricity to split water into its component parts of oxygen and hydrogen, which is called electrolysis. But with electrolysis, the cost of the hydrogen is directly proportional to the cost of the electricity. So what's needed is a huge and inexpensive source of heat to make the electricity and ultimately the hydrogen. The technology to do this, with the power of the sun, has quietly come into existence in the past decade. This solar disk genset was developed for NASA and the Jet Propulsion Laboratory by the McDonnell Douglas Corporation in the late 1970s. It concentrates the heat of the sun at a single point, where a heat engine, such as a Stirling engine, is located. If an electrolyzer were added to the unit, hydrogen and oxygen would then be produced. The ideal location for disk gensets would be the desert areas of the Southwest and California. Ocean thermal energy conversion, or OTEC, is a concept which has been around for more than 100 years and has been heavily researched by companies like Lockheed, Grumman, TRW, and others. OTEC, which uses the differences in ocean temperatures at different depths to produce electricity, can also be used to make hydrogen. A significant byproduct of this process is fresh water. In fact, the OTEC system is the most cost-effective method of desalinating ocean water ever devised. Another promising technology are offshore wind energy systems. Located out to sea, where the winds are much stronger and steadier than they are on land, these wind energy systems could be used to produce hydrogen, which would then be piped or shipped to land, as with the OTEC plants. Sewage and landfill accumulations, which are serious environmental problems, may be the cheapest source of hydrogen of all. In a process called bioremediation, naturally occurring microbes are used to break the raw sewage down into hydrogen and carbon. The hydrogen can, of course, be used as a fuel, and the carbon can be used to purify the remaining water. Similar biological processes can also be used to dispose of most toxic waste as well. In the case of hazardous compounds, the hydrogen produced by the microbes would be used to reclaim the heavy metals contained in the toxic waste through chemical reduction and electroplating processes. These technologies, which are already proven, could easily produce enough hydrogen to allow the United States and other countries to make a transition to a hydrogen economy system. And the good news is that the industrial infrastructure to bring about such a transition is already in place. The solar dish genset, for instance, is very similar to an automobile in terms of material and manufacturing costs. In fact, any company that can make an automobile can make a dish genset. And if dish gensets are like cars, OTEC plants are like ships, and wind energy conversion systems are like airplanes. Automotive and aerospace companies have the capacity in this new post-Cold War era to mass produce these renewable resource systems. The oil and energy companies stand to benefit greatly in our nation's conversion to hydrogen. They have both the financial and the distribution resources which will be needed. Now, many people fear that hydrogen is unsafe. In fact, it is much safer than gasoline or oil. The Hindenburg disaster is often cited as an example of the risks involved with hydrogen. But in this worst-case accident, 2/3 of the passengers and crew walked away from that accident unharmed. Of the 35 people who did die in the accident, 2 died from the burns involving the diesel fuel and other burning material. But the other 32 people died because they jumped out of the airship and they died from the fall. So even in a worst-case accident, what the Hindenburg really shows us is not how dangerous hydrogen is, but how safe it really is. OTEC systems, wind energy conversion systems, or dish genset systems all represent the kinds of solar technologies that could be mass-produced for large-scale hydrogen production. With these kinds of systems, we will eliminate the whole concept of the energy crisis. And in the case of the United States, we'll be able to save billions of dollars that we're now spending to import foreign energy. But most important, this kind of an energy transition will fundamentally resolve many of the most serious global environmental problems that are related to urban air pollution, oil spills, acid rain, or stratospheric ozone depletion. Not only can we put an end to these problems, in time we will be able to reverse the damage that we've done. It is certainly the case that a transition to a hydrogen energy system will be good for the economy. It's going to stimulate the industry in the U.S. and other countries for many decades to come. But the bottom line is that a transition to a hydrogen energy system will save our planet and our future.